Hey guys, welcome back to our Porsche restoration project. I'm Mike. In this video we're going to go over all the parts and pieces and various components needed to tighten up our engine bay. So what we're going to try and do, get everything up to the point where we're ready to receive the engine a little bit down the road. But for now, at least get one section of the car cleaned up and almost to a finishing point. So you can see here I've got the control board laid out. We're going to go over that piece by piece. I think we're going to do this last. All the various brackets, and then also our oil tank here. This original oil tank been restored. We'll talk about what I did to bring that back and get it installed on the car. So yeah, freezing cold day out here in Las Vegas, but excellent day to work on the car. So let's just go ahead and do an overview of this, talk about the little pieces we got going here, and then we'll go ahead and get some of the stuff on the car. Okay, so let's just take a quickie look and see all the various parts and pieces we're going to be going through during this video here. So some of the rubber mounts and refreshed hardware for our control board, also a new coil, oil tank, all the various seals and brackets to put that guy back on. Then also we're going to talk about our engine mounts and what to do with our washers there. Probably like the $1,000,000 mystery question as to how those washers install. I found some interesting reading on that. Also some soundproofing. We're going to install that today. Some heater tubing, fender brackets, and engine lid hinges. Okay, let's first start with the oil tank. I want to put a couple pictures in here, show you what this guy looked like before we did the reconditioning. All right, yeah, you can see there by those pictures, this thing really came back nicely. So what I did to recondition this, basically stripped all the paint off with a paint stripper, just to take a good look at the condition of the shell. Didn't have any severe rust pitting or any kind of dents or damage in there. Also, condition of the oil when I drained it from here was virtually brand new, so feeling pretty confident, not any sludge built up in there. So yeah, paint stripped the outside, cleaned it up real good, and then I soaked it in gasoline for quite some time. Shook it with the gasoline in there, poured it out, another gasoline rinse, and then followed it up with a hot water soapy rinse inside there. Just really shaking it up vigorously, and then flushing it out with a water hose. Once I got everything out of there, followed up with a compressed air, blew everything out so we flash dry it, we don't get any rust in there. I'm pretty much ready to go. After that, sealed off all the ends, light media blasting on the outside, POR 15 coating on the base, sanded up with some high temperature engine paint, spray paint on the outside. Okay, so let's bring this guy outside and put her on. Okay, so we're back out here at the car. Looks like it's pretty straightforward putting this guy on. We just basically have two mounting points. We got one rubber seal over the oil filler neck, and then we have a couple of male-female mounts here. So what's going to happen? I have not been able to find any good photography or diagrams as to which one of these go on first, whether it be this one or this one in the oil tank position. But the way I logically look at it, it looks like this one would go on first, and this would be a centering, almost like a centering peg in our holes there. And this particular diameter here is exactly the right diameter to fit over the flange on the inside of the engine compartment. Let me snap those in place, and you can see what I'm talking about. All right, looking at the inside then, so we got our rubber body grommets in place, and here's the mounting holes I was talking about. I see a little flange there, got one there and one there. And so what I'm thinking is these guys here, they just snap right over that guy. That's exact size on there. And then the outer edge will actually bear down on the sheet metal. So I think that's going to be the best logical explanation for those guys. Okay, so we're just kind of holding it in place here so you can see the front. It's almost like it's centering up on that hole with that bushing in there. And this guy pulls right through our grommet there. This one seats right up against the back. And then also you can see our oil filler neck seal doing its job. And then back here, so We're almost in location here. What I want to do, let me tighten all this front assembly up here, and then I think I can pull this one back here right through that hole. Alright, so I've got the front one here just finger tight. You can see now everything's just lining up the way it should. I've got plenty of adjustment back here, so shouldn't be any problem bringing that guy through that hole. Let me go ahead and nut this down, and we'll step back, take a look at her. Alright, so yeah, no problem, get that guy through there. You got to pull on the oil tank a little bit because you're really fighting against the thickness of this oil filler seal in there. But everything looks like it's all sealed up nice and tight in there. No way any dust or moisture can penetrate those areas. And then no torque settings on these guys. Really what we're doing, we're just tightening that down until we feel as if everything's bottomed out, and then snug right after that point. So the whole area really, it remains quite flexible. Okay, let's go ahead and put our oil filter assembly together. Okay, new seal in here. Also want to coat the seal with a little engine oil. And this big hole, this is going to go up and align with this guy here. And then our bolts, just put a little Loctite on there and thread them in. Kind of wiggle it just a little bit, make sure she's seated. And then no torque specs on these either. I couldn't find anything, but it has a rubber seal behind it, so in my mind, we're tightening this down until everything bottoms out and that seal is completely touching all the way around. Alright, so that one's in place. Everything's nice and snug there. Let's go ahead and move on to the oil filler neck. So in review of looking at some old photographs, the way this car disassembled, it looks like the oil filler tube slides down inside the oil tank right up to this ridge right here. So that's its seating point. And then our opening is basically horizontal plane facing upwards is the correct angle on that. And then here's our original hose I pulled off there. You can see the bulge in the center there. So what's really happening there? You can see the impregnation of our original hose clamps, one tight to the rear and one just over the bulge there, which comes up front. So this guy's going to sit right in that position there for our hose clamps and positioning of our hose. I'm going to go ahead and replace it with a new replacement from Porsche. Let me go ahead and get those clamps in position there, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at her. Alright, so that's going to do it for our oil filler tube. You can see the embossed area here bulging over our stopping point, and also direction of screws. The head should be facing forward. A little bit difficult to get a screwdriver in there. If you're doing this, might be a good idea. Put this guy on second, put the oil filler tube on first. It'll be a little bit easier to get that in there. However, it does go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our fender braces, and we can tie this side to the oil tank. Alright, so here's a look at our bumper slash fender bracket, support bracket. So what these guys are going to do, they're going to hold together that whole assembly out there. So when I put these in, I'm just going to finger tight the large nut and locking washer for now. Probably going to need to adjust those around and tension on those once we get our bumpers in place. Also, you can see I've got a O-ring seal in there. So when I took the car apart, one side had a seal on it, or some kind of a rubber gasket, but the other side didn't. So I think really they should have something there. As you put them up through the body, there's a hole there, and from the bottom side this could take in water, so I can see that really acting like a seal. Okay, let me get these guys slid into place and we'll go ahead and take a look at them. So here's our driver's side setting down in there. There's our passenger side, oil tank side. And then the bottom side of the oil tank, you can see how that bracket sits up in there. And then also how it lines up with our fender out there. And then also you can see that seal in there. So once I tighten that down real tight, that should compress and do a real nice job sealing any water out. And then same thing on our driver's side, our seal up in there. So next, let's get our engine mounts in place, mount those up, and then see what's going on with those washers. Alright, let's see what's going on with our engine mounts. So what I have here, these are new replacement engine mounts from Porsche, and I've got my originals here to compare them with. You can see what's happening here on the top side, what's going on over time with the weight of the engine and agitation. It's basically just cratering the top of the engine mount and pushing it out the bottom. You can see the bottom side there starting to push through in relation to our new replacement. And the inner sleeves and outer dimensions of these engine mounts are identical. So what's going to happen if we put our washers in this location here, and this is the way it would have come on the early cars, up to what year I'm not sure, but early models were set up this way, and it's also shown this way in the manual. However, apparently sometime in the early 80s, Porsche sent around a bulletin to the service centers recommending that they turn the engine mount washers over, and basically what that's going to do, that's going to, under a nutted down situation, it's basically going to add compression to the engine mount rubber and stop it from sinking and cratering. You can see there, side by side, you're going to get a little bit more longevity out of it this way than this way. Even though originally this is the way they were set up like this, there's really no support there, and you can really take advantage of this shape and size of these washers by flipping them over. So really both ways are correct. Concours correct would be this way for the early car, or excuse me, Concours correct would be this direction for the early cars. But in the case of this restoration, I'm going to go ahead and flip them over. You're just going to get better performance in the long run if we turn the washers over this way. Okay, let's take these outside and put them on. Okay, that just drops into place. Yeah, Loctite. One split washer and nut on the bottom side. All right, and then just kind of whittle it a little bit, just make sure she's centered and seated in there. All right, and then we'll tighten these up and torque them down to 18 pounds. All right, and then a quickie look at our final arrangement. So what we're doing, we're just putting a regular washer under the head of our main bolt, and then bottom side will have a split washer and nut, and we'll Loctite that, and when the time comes, that one will be 65 pounds. And then same thing on the other side. All right, so that's pretty much going to do it for our engine mounts for now. Let's go ahead and install the rear defroster tubing. You can see that stem sitting up in the corner there. So we're just going to slide over that guy and clamp down. When we get to the top section here, I'm not going to install the defroster tubes at the window at this time, because I still have to do some upholstery work on the inside. As soon as it warms up, be a little bit more flexible in there to do that. But for now, let's just go ahead and put these in. That's a real simple one. So here's a look at our heater tubing. I got these from Stoddard. They come pre-cut. One of them a little bit longer than the other one, although I'm not able to see that there's any difference left or right as far as installing them. So really the main thing you want to look out for here is when they're slid into position on our bottom side here, that the bend is working in our favor towards the top defroster tube once that guy gets in there. So you want to make sure we're not putting too much of a twist on it. Let me go ahead and figure that angle out, get this camera equipment out of here. It's basically just going to have zip tie on there. Let me sort that out, install those, and then we'll have a look at her. All right, so that's a real simple, quick one to do there. So really the only thing I can see that would be a problem is just maybe over-tightening our zip ties. They could cut into the foam. Just be cautious there. Other than that, it looks like the angle for these guys is going to work best leaning backwards. Okay, next up, let's go get our engine sound pad, take a look at that, and then see what's involved putting that in place. So here's a close-up look at our engine sound pad. So a lot of different sound pads on the market to fit these cars, ranging fairly inexpensive to fairly expensive. This particular one here, almost $400 to get this pad, and the reason it's so expensive is going to be this round dot configuration impregnated into the pad. So the early cars had that pattern embossed in it. A lot of the sound pads out there will not have that pattern pressed in there. So if it's a really expensive sound pad, chances are you're going to have this pattern pressed in it. Otherwise, you can get these as inexpensive as $100 and probably will work the same. However, to be concourse correct, we really need to have that pattern in there. I purchased this from Aussie Sales. I recommend you guys check those guys out if you haven't already. I'm going to post a link below to some of the suppliers I use. I really recommend these guys. If looking for some really hard to find original parts or some really high quality aftermarket parts, Aussie Sales is great. Also Stoddard is fantastic, and I'm going to list a few others down there. You can check those guys out. I really recommend. Okay, not too much going on with this guy. Basically, it just hopefully is cut to the right pattern and presses into shape. It's got some bending tabs that will lock it in there, and that's basically it. Let's take it out there and see if it fits. All right, so I just got that setting in there. So really what's going to happen, it's just going to press down in at the bottom edge there and towards the firewall. I'm going to have to just kind of wrestle and massage it into place around all these other little configurations. And then just these bending tabs up here, these are going to hold it in place. So temporarily I'll just pull those out of the way and get that guy pressed in behind there. So let me put the camera down, wrestle with that, and put her in. All right, well that slid right into place. Money well spent there. Exact fitment. Look how tight everything fits around the contours of the body and all the different protrusions it's got to work around. No problem get our defroster tubes in there, engine lid hinges, and also our tabs. Finishes up real nice. And then the same thing on this side. Just a real nice fit. Slid right into place. Everything exact. Contour profiles. And real nice quality pad. Very happy with that. So yeah, you want a nice sound pad, I recommend Aussie Sales and this sound pad for sure. I generally try to use as much genuine Porsche for the restoration as I can. However, sometimes they just don't have the parts available, or they're discontinued, no longer available, and you have to resort to the aftermarket, which can sometimes be really rough getting through an install. But just absolute beautiful job with this sound pad. Okay, so let's get our engine lid hinges, get those put into place, and see what they look like. All right, so just to quickly look at our hinges here. So yeah, restored these. Were just sandblasted, epoxy coating for the primer, base coat, clear coat on top of that. Puts a real nice finish on there. And then restoring our original fasteners with our electroplating. Okay, that should be a real simple one. Let's go put those on. So we'll have to pull the sound pad out of the way a little bit just to get our hinge in location. Also, we want to put a little petroleum grease on all mating and rotating surfaces, just so we don't have any kind of friction once we get her nutted down. Okay, and then just tight enough to where it's not going to back out of there. We don't want to put too much pressure on it, but just checking for free movement, any kind of squeaking. That looks like that's going to work out just fine. All right, then we just tuck our engine pad back up in there. Okay, looking good. And then same thing on this side. And tight enough, just so it's drawn up, but not tight enough to put any kind of compression on this tab here. All right, let's check that. Good free motion in there. Put our sound pad back. All right, I think that's going to work just fine. And the next simple one to put in place is going to be our strut. So what I'm doing, I'm just securing the front here up at the firewall first. Then we're going to go ahead and roll it into our hinge. Temporarily going to pin it for now while we're working on our control board. Once our control board's set up and in place, then we'll go ahead and re-pull that pin out of there and let both these guys hang. Reason that is I just don't want to have this thing sticking up above our paintwork as once that strut's installed, it's going to be constant up. So, okay, so let's go get that control board and put her in. So I've gone ahead and pre-installed everything on the control board, ready to install on the car. Really all it's going to take is 3 bolts and rubber mounts and a rubber buffer, and it's ready to go. I'm replacing the original coil bracket that came with a new coil. I'm not going to go with that as it doesn't look as nice as our original, so I'm using the original coil bracket. And this coil here actually is a Bosch blue coil, painted up and decaled up to look like the original, or as close to the original as possible. We'll talk about the wiring differences on this versus the original. You can see our regulator here, fuel pump, and all the different things going on with it. I think what I want to do, because this video is starting to get a little bit long, let's go ahead and break this down into 2 segments. We'll call this part 1. I'll get this mounted on the car for today. We can take a look at it. In part 2, we can spend some time with it, and also the wiring harness, and look at all the connections, how it integrates into there, and really spend some time explaining how this thing works. You can see I've got our alternator harness here. This is going to integrate into it. All our wires are labeled, and be real interesting to know how all this works. Also, we've got the engine seal rubber that still needs to be installed, and some block-off rubber here. We can spend some time on the second part putting that in and see what's involved with that. So for now, let's just take our control board here, take it outside, get it mounted up, and have a look at it. You can see on the back side here I've done a little grinding just to make sure we get some good ground connections there. Once we put it on, we won't be able to access that anymore. But other than that, yeah, I think we're ready to go. Okay, let's go put her on. Okay, so let's just take a look at our 3 mounting points first. So we got 1 in the rear, we got 1 up front, top, and bottom. Then we're going to take our rubber bushings, and we're going to squeeze those into the hole. You can see where it's been sitting in there over time, but the rubber's still in really good condition anyways, and these are tough to find. So we're going to go ahead and lock those in there like so. Then we're going to take the bolt and washer in from the back side, slide it through. Once I have all 3 in location, I'll go ahead and slide the board over that and nut it down. But first, let me get the camera gear out of here so I got some room to work in there, and then we'll take a look at her. All right, looking good here. So yeah, the only thing I see here that really might want to just be caution to is just over tightening these nuts here with our 3 mounts. Would be possible to over compress our rubber bushings back there. As you can see, we have a little bit of flex in there, and we're still plenty snug. However, I could retorque that down and really pull that in, but I don't think that would be necessary. I think we want some room for flexibility in there. All right, guys, so I think we're going to go ahead and call it quits here for today. We'll pick this up on part 2, go over the engine seal, and then take a look at all this wiring, explain this control board in greater detail, and have a real good understanding of our engine bay. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next video.